The first rays of dawn crept timidly across the horizon, painting the sky in pale shades of gold and blue. Inside a tiny apartment on the edge of the city, Alexei, a single father in his early 30s, stood in front of the cracked bathroom mirror, adjusting the same tie he had worn to every important moment of his life. It wasn't new, and it wasn't stylish, but it symbolized hope that today might finally be different. Behind him, the small apartment was slowly waking up. The kettle whistled, his daughter's soft humming floated through the thin hallway walls, and somewhere a neighbor slammed their door on the way to work. Life was happening all around him, but today, Alexei felt every sound more sharply, as though the world was reminding him how much was at stake. He stepped into his daughter's room. Lyra, only 7, lay curled under a blanket covered in fading cartoon characters. Her hair tumbled over the pillow like a sunlit cloud. She opened her eyes the moment she sensed her father standing there. "Papa, today is your big day," she whispered, still half asleep. Alexei smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yes, little star, today might be the day everything changes." She pushed herself up and reached for something on her bedside table, a small drawing made with colored pencils. On it, she had drawn the two of them holding hands under a rainbow, with the words, "For my brave papa," written in uneven letters. "I made this for good luck," she said proudly. The paper was wrinkled, the colors uneven, but for Alexei, it felt like the most precious gift in the world. He swallowed the tightness in his throat and kissed her forehead. "I'll take it with me." As he tucked the drawing into the inside pocket of his jacket, he tried to hide his nervousness. He had rehearsed every answer to every possible interview question the night before, long after Lyra had fallen asleep. He needed this job. Not for pride, not for comfort, but for survival. The bills were piling up, the rent was overdue, and his part-time work shifts weren't enough anymore. This job represented security, a future, a chance to give Lyra the life she deserved. He made her a simple breakfast, tea and a slice of bread with jam, while she sat at the small kitchen table kicking her legs, humming a tune only children seem capable of inventing. She watched him closely, sensing the seriousness of the day even if she didn't fully understand it. "Will they like you?" she asked suddenly. He laughed softly. "I hope so, because I like you," she said matter-of-factly, as if this was all the proof the world needed. Those words warmed him more than the tea he gulped down before grabbing his worn coat. He walked Lyra to the neighbor who watched her during work hours, kissed her cheek, and whispered, "Wish me luck." "Good luck, Papa," she shouted, waving both hands. The city was waking up as Alexei stepped outside. Cold air bit at his cheeks, buses roared past, and commuters hurried in every direction. He walked with purpose toward his old car, a rusty thing held together by more hope than metal, climbed in, and started the engine. Today was the day, or so he believed. The road stretched ahead like a silver ribbon, glistening under the cold morning light. Alexei's old car rattled as it picked up speed, the engine groaning in protest. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, glancing at the dashboard clock. If he stayed on schedule, he would arrive 10 minutes early, just enough time to breathe, straighten his tie, and walk in with confidence. He replayed answers to interview questions in his mind, forming sentences, practicing calm tones, imagining himself sitting across from the hiring manager. Everything depended on staying focused. Everything depended on getting there. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. As he rounded a bend on the quiet stretch of highway, he spotted something unusual in the distance, a figure standing beside a stalled car parked on the shoulder. At first, Alexei told himself to keep driving. His heart thumped faster as he thought of Lyra's drawing in his pocket and the promise of a better future. He couldn't afford delays. Not today. But as he drew closer, the scene sharpened into heartbreaking clarity. It was an older woman, perhaps in her late 60s, wrapped in a thin coat far too light for the biting wind. She stood anxiously beside her car, trying to wave down passing vehicles. Dozens of cars sped by. Shiny sedans, business commuters, people who didn't even slow down as her hand trembled in the air. Alexei's foot hovered over the accelerator. "Keep going," a small voice inside him whispered. "You can't risk it. You need this job." But another voice, stronger, quieter, and shaped by years of hardship, said, "What if this were your mother? What if this were you someday?" He exhaled deeply and slowed the car. As he pulled over, the woman's shoulders dropped with visible relief. She pressed her hands together as if thanking the sky before approaching his window. Her face was lined, her cheeks reddened by the cold, and her eyes held the exhaustion of someone who had been stranded for far too long. Thank you for stopping," she said, her breath visible in the icy air. "My car just died. And my phone battery is gone, and her voice cracked slightly. "It's all right," Alexei said gently, stepping out of his car. "Let's take a look." The cold slammed into him like a wall, but he didn't complain. He popped the hood of her car and leaned over the engine, the metallic smell mixing with winter air. After several minutes of checking cables, wiping grease off his hands, and tightening loose parts, he realized the issue was fixable, but not quickly. The woman watched him, her eyes clouded with worry. "I'm so sorry to trouble you. You must be on your way somewhere important." Alexei hesitated. He could feel the minutes slipping away like sand between his fingers. "I'll be all right," he said finally. "Let's get you back on the road." Her gaze softened with gratitude. Half an hour passed. Longer than he wanted, much longer than he could afford. But finally, with a sputter and a roar, the engine came to life. The woman gasped. "Bless you. I don't know what I would have done." Alexei smiled, though inside, a quiet dread was growing. "It's okay," he said, wiping the grease from his hands. "Just drive safely." He waved as she pulled away, her gratitude shining in her eyes. Only once she disappeared down the road did he look at his phone. His interview time had passed. The moment Alexei's trembling fingers unlocked his phone, the screen lit up with a series of notifications, missed calls, unread messages, and one short email that made his heart plummet. "We're sorry to inform you that your interview time has expired. Please feel free to reapply in the future." The words blurred slightly as he stared at them, the cold air suddenly feeling heavier, pressing against his chest like a physical weight. His breath hitched. For a moment, the world fell silent. No passing cars, no winter wind, just the echo of the opportunity slipping through his grasp. He sank into the driver's seat, leaning his head back against the worn fabric. His hands, still covered in traces of grease from repairing the woman's car, trembled as he tried to steady his breathing. "What have I done? I needed this. Lyra needed this." The thought of his daughter's hopeful eyes flashed through his mind. He felt as though he had failed her, not by lack of effort, but by choosing compassion over urgency. He closed his eyes tightly, frustration and fear swirling inside him. After a long moment, he forced himself to inhale deeply. The air tasted of cold metal and old regret. "It's all right," he whispered to himself, though he didn't fully believe it. "At least she's safe." He reminded himself that he would always choose kindness, even if life punished him for it. It was who he was. It was the only way he knew how to live. Just then, the woman he had helped reappeared in his thoughts, her trembling hands, the way her voice shook when she thanked him. Maybe she was someone's mother, someone who mattered to the world in ways he couldn't imagine. Maybe his delay had prevented something terrible from happening to her. Those thoughts dulled the sting in his heart, but only slightly. He straightened his tie out of habit before letting his hands drop into his lap. The irony was almost laughable. He had prepared so carefully, rehearsed answers, practiced confidence, worn his best clothes, only to lose the chance entirely. With a heavy sigh, he turned the key in the ignition. The old engine coughed before starting. As he pulled back onto the road, the morning light had already shifted. The sun had climbed higher, melting the frost but not the disappointment clinging to his chest. He drove slowly, feeling each passing second like a reminder of what could have been. His thoughts spiraled. What would he tell Lyra? Would she be disappointed? Would she blame herself for giving him that drawing, as children sometimes did? No, he wouldn't let her feel that burden. By the time he reached the neighborhood where the babysitter lived, he had rehearsed a softer, gentler version of the truth. Something that wouldn't break her little heart. As he walked toward the door, the drawing in his pocket rustled softly. He pulled it out for a moment, studying the uneven rainbow and the two smiling figures holding hands. The innocence of it struck him deeply. Maybe, he thought, failure wasn't the end. Maybe kindness had its own path, even if he couldn't see where it led yet. He took one final breath, straightened his shoulders, and knocked on the door, determined to face his daughter with a smile, no matter how heavy the disappointment felt inside. The next morning arrived quietly, slipping into Alexei's apartment like an uninvited guest. The air felt colder, somehow heavier, as though the walls themselves understood the weight of yesterday's disappointment. Alexei moved slowly through the kitchen, pouring tea into a chipped mug while Lyra colored at the table, humming softly to herself. He watched her small hands move the colored pencil across the paper, her cheeks glowing with innocence. She had greeted him that morning with her usual bright smile, completely unaware of the storm inside his chest. He didn't have the heart to tell her the truth yet, not until he figured out what they would do next. Money was tight, opportunities were rare, and hope, no matter how much he tried to hold on to it, felt like it was slipping from his fingers. He sat down across from her, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Maybe today he would start looking for new openings, even if they paid less, even if they weren't enough. Something was better than nothing. He couldn't afford to be idle. Just as he reached for his phone to check for job postings, it buzzed sharply in his hand. An unknown number. His heart gave a small, startled jump. Usually, unknown numbers meant telemarketers, or worse, unpaid bills. He considered letting it ring, but something made him answer. "Hello," he said, trying not to sound as tired as he felt. A warm but confident voice responded. "Good morning. Am I speaking with Alexei Morozov?" His back straightened. "Yes, this is Alexei." There was a soft pause, then the voice continued, calm and clear. "My name is Elena Mikhailova, director of the company you applied to. I understand you had an interview scheduled yesterday." Alexei froze. His breath caught in his throat. Of all the people who could have called him, she was the least expected. His heart pounded as he tried to find words. "Yes, I'm very sorry," he murmured. "Something unexpected happened on the road." I know," she interjected gently. His confusion deepened. "You know." Another pause, longer this time, filled with something he couldn't decipher. "Yesterday," she said, "you helped an older woman whose car had broken down." Alexei blinked. "How did she?" "That woman," Elena continued softly, "was my mother." The room seemed to tilt. Alexei stared at the far wall, stunned into silence. He felt heat flood his face, not embarrassment, but disbelief. "She told me everything," Elena went on, her voice thick with emotion. How cars passed her without stopping, how cold she was, how frightened. And how a man in an old car gave up his own important day to help her. Alexei swallowed hard. "I didn't do anything special," he said quietly. "You did something rare," she corrected him. "You showed humanity when it mattered." Lyra's pencil paused mid-stroke as she looked up curiously at her father. Elena's next words washed over him like warm sunlight breaking through winter clouds. "Alexei, men like you don't just work for companies, they strengthen them. If you're still interested, I would very much like to invite you for another interview. Today, at whatever time works for you." Alexei closed his eyes, fighting the sudden sting of tears. Hope wasn't lost. It had simply been waiting to return in a form he never expected. Yes, he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I'm still interested. Thank you, truly." Lyra jumped up and hugged him without knowing why, but sensing everything. And Alexei allowed himself, for the first time in days, to truly smile. The taxi hummed softly as it navigated through the city streets, carrying Alexei and Lyra toward a future neither had dared to imagine just 24 hours ago. Alexei's hands rested lightly on his lap, though his heart raced with anticipation. Lyra, seated beside him, fidgeted excitedly with a small bundle of colored pencils she had insisted on bringing along. Her bright eyes kept darting toward her father, sensing the electricity of something important yet unseen. As they arrived at the company's modern glass building, Alexei paused for a moment in the cold morning air. He drew a deep breath, feeling the chill against his cheeks but focusing on the warmth in his chest. Today wasn't just about a job. It was about what kindness and courage could bring into the world, even when it seemed like the world might reward nothing in return. He straightened his tie one last time and stepped forward. Inside, the lobby was bustling with energy. Receptionists moved with professional precision, and glass walls reflected the morning sun, scattering light across the polished floors. Alexei felt a flicker of anxiety, but Lyra's hand in his reminded him of why he had come. Every step he took echoed with a mixture of nerves and hope. Alexei Morozov, a calm, firm voice called. He looked up to see Elena Mikhailova herself, standing with a warm smile, her eyes welcoming rather than intimidating. She extended her hand. I'm glad you came. Please, follow me. Alexei felt a strange mix of relief and disbelief. This was the woman whose mother he had helped, an act he had considered a simple duty of humanity. Yet now, that same act had opened a door wider than he could have ever imagined. They walked through the hallways, the sound of footsteps fading behind them, until they reached Alina's office. She gestured for him to sit, her expression softening. Kindness, she said quietly, is the most important qualification we often overlook. Skills are vital, yes, but heart is rare. And yours is extraordinary. Alexei nodded, words failing him. He could feel Lyra's gaze on him, her small smile like a gentle anchor. He reached into his pocket and felt the crumpled drawing she had made him. The little rainbow, the figures holding hands, it had carried him through moments of doubt and despair. Elena continued, we've all heard stories about people doing the right thing despite personal cost, but rarely do we meet them. Yesterday, you showed all of us what that means. I want you on our team, Alexei, not just because of what you can do professionally, but because of who you are. Tears pricked his eyes. Words he had long rehearsed for interviews suddenly felt meaningless compared to this validation. He swallowed hard and nodded. Thank you, truly. I won't let you, or anyone, down. Alina's smile widened. I have no doubt. That evening, back in their small apartment, Alexei and Lyra sat together with a simple dinner. The hum of the city outside seemed gentler somehow. He hugged his daughter tightly, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the warmth of her love and trust. Papa, she said softly, I knew something good would happen. Alexei chuckled, eyes glistening. Yes, little star, and it came because we chose to do the right thing, even when it was hard. In that moment, Alexei understood a profound truth. Sometimes, the opportunities we lose are merely stepping stones to miracles we never saw coming. The world had tested him, but kindness had returned to him multiplied. And together, he and Lyra could finally step into a future filled with hope, love, and endless possibilities.